All right, Leonard, so we're in the back half of DTW Ignite here in Copenhagen. We've gone through the bulk of the programming. I think you've had time to make the rounds, have some meetings, see some demos. What do you think? What's kind of standing out to you? And why is it AI?
I think I have to say AI, AI, AI. How's that?
Well, help me separate the signal from the noise a little bit. I mean, you know, AI is not magic. It's not going to solve everybody's business problems, but it does certainly have a role to play for operators. There's ways to gain efficiency, make some new money, but I mean, where do you think they should get started?
Well, I think we need to unpack the idea of AI and be clear on what it actually is, right? Which is basically a collection of different types of applications that are enabled by AI technology. And there's a lot of things underneath it that, you know, the telco industry has been working on for a long time. And I think one of the key takes that I am walking away with on day 2 here is that a lot of that older stuff, right, is now coming to the forefront and actually proving itself. And some of these orchestration frameworks that have been emerging and evolving, those are actually helping this ML, if you will, machine learning, and more of the traditional or classical AI exhibit value now, right, in applications. And there's a level of let's call it telco grade that we're starting to see exhibited in especially a lot of the catalysts that showed up this year. So I think that's I think it's a positive sign, right? Now all the agentic stuff, right? So whether it's, you know, the MOEs or the LLMs or the SLMs and et cetera, all the stuff that's been kind of like in vogue for the last 2 years, those are things that are still, you know, in discovery mode, right? And I think one of the things that the folks here are now realizing is that here are the things that you can do with it, here are the things that you can't, here are some of the best practices and frameworks that can be applied to you know, address the issues related to, you know, hallucinations, drift, and all these other problems that come with generative AI technologies, and be able to channel them into something that may at some point you know, follow in the footsteps of the classical AI stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in there around agentic AI, and I think your characterization of discovery phase is correct, but I guess as I look at it, I don't think that telco organizations from a people perspective are ready for agentic AI because I don't think they trust it. And I think in a highly regulated business like that, trust is going to be key. So I mean, how do you think about this idea of developing trust?
Well, it's going to be a long road, right? Because at the moment, the technology is not necessarily trustworthy from its foundation, right? And so, you know, as you look at these agentic frameworks and different patterns for building trustworthy applications, that needs to be realized first before you can really have an organization start to put faith in the application, right? And for solution providers as well as innovators out there, that's one of the biggest challenges is how do you make this stuff telco grade, enterprise grade, XYZ grade, right? And that's a vector of innovation. I think that's been put in the back burner at the moment, that really needs to be put in the fore, because for an industry like telco, actually for many industries, enterprise, these applications need to be reliable, right? And that fundamentally means that innovators and developers and service providers, they need to address the limitations and the challenges that you know, generative AI technologies are going to present, right? These are realities, and if you ignore them, well, you know, your innovation is not really going to make it to market.
One thing I was hoping to see more emphasis on that I think is crucial, and it also relates to trust, is the idea of explainability in an AI system. Like, let's say you're trying to apply AI to just trouble ticket resolution. It'll just give you a recommendation, but if you go to interrogate the chain of thought that led to that recommendation, you may or may not be able to do that. And I think that ability to examine the recommendation will be essential to developing trust. But I am curious, like, if your goal is to make an AI tool more understandable, to understand how it got from point A to point B, is that the vendor's problem to solve, or is that the buyer's problem to figure out?
Well, I think it's both, quite honestly, right? So as a vendor, if, part of, I think, the regime of responsible AI is to put out products that are of quality and of, minimum reliability, so that your product doesn't present risk to your customers, right? And vice versa. Organizations have an obligation to ensure that whatever technologies they adopt and implement doesn't cause harm to their customers or their stakeholders, right? Whether it's an employee, whether it's shareholders, and so these are all things that really do need to be thought through in order for the technology to prove that it's trustworthy and can actually be used in a valuable way within a business, right?
So let me change gears here a little bit. Open Ran Squid Game. This is an article that Leonard wrote for us, and it's an excellent characterization. But as we see carrier-grade AI solutions come into market, and obviously there's a lot of pressure from boards and C-suites for operators to start to do things with AI, how do you think this changes the logic around Open RAN? Does it shift focus from Open RAN to AI RAN, or does the fundamental logic of Open RAN, of distributed intelligence within a radio network, lend itself to putting AI tooling into that network?
Yeah, I think Open RAN has had its impact, right? I think you've seen adoption of, the evolution of the standards, right? You've seen the adoption of the architectures across a number of the major players, right? Including Ericsson and Nokia, right? And so I think the industry has realized that it's an approach, okay, and I think actually operators are starting to appreciate the Open RAN approach, right, and the value that it could bring and does bring in certain instances. And I think the AI RAN topic is really a different topic entirely, right? Open RAN, the architecture of the RAN will provide sort of a backdrop for how AI RAN concepts will be overlaid on top of it, right? And so I think AI RAN is a totally different conversation from the way I look at it.
Well, let me dig in on that.
Yeah.
Do you think, what is the case for GPU accelerated compute in a radio access network? Like, what problem is that solving?
Well, that's a really good question. I think there's some hypotheticals out there, but in terms of, why do you need a GPU versus other accelerators is really more of an economic and cost performance type of decision, right? It's a technical decision. Now, if you start to talk about monetization, that's an entirely different discussion, right? And that discussion at the moment is in a very nascent state, where I think a lot of the players in the industry right now don't really have a good answer for why, right? Other than just really a choice of what kind of accelerator and what kind of architecture do you want to, standardize as part of your RAN technical strategy, right?
So Leonard, as you get ready for what I assume is a 2.5-day journey back to San Diego and start to organize your research, what are you going to tell your clients? What's the headline here?
I think the headline here is actually two main things. One's AI related, the other is not. Actually, they are kind of related to each other. The first is that, as I mentioned before, AI is here. It's just that first phase of telco AI, if you will, is starting to take root and exhibit a potential, right? And that also means that the generative stuff, we're at early phases with that. And the discovery is really about limitations. The other thing is also hearing a lot of vendors on the floor wanting to put the spotlight on readiness, right? So if you're going to do all this aspirational stuff with AI, right, whether it's the classical stuff, right, the ML stuff, or agentic and generative, you need to have a certain degree of modernization of your operations, of your business capabilities, right, and also your data and knowledge. That's the other thing. We talk a lot about data, but knowledge is another abstraction layer above data. That needs to also be clean, right? And it has to have relevance and integrity. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to provide the proper kind of fuel, the proper octane, if you will, to fuel your AI applications.
So let me play that back for you. As operators start to invest in AI and see where they can affect meaningful change, it's probably going to expose some underlying issues with their data strategy and platforms, with their legacy infrastructure, and it's also going to require a big exercise in organizational transformation in people,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of things to consider, and that this isn't going to be a simple journey. There's a lot of things that need to be factored in particular, full life cycle management of these intelligent systems or autonomous network and business operations, right? It's definitely a different modality of operating, but it also comes with significant effort as well as cost related to that transformation. And the organizational bit, I think, here's the other thing, that one of the big benefits that I think some folks are starting to tune into is that AI will help organizations deal with underserved and unserved aspects of their business, whether it's in the call center or in the NOC, right? It will, And so I think that's a point of view that some folks are starting to realize, in addition to human augmentation or the augmentation of people. So right now I think you hear a lot about how AI is going to replace everybody and take everyone's job. I think it's going to take a significant effort to make that happen, if it ever happens. But I think what's really going to happen is a shift in the way that we operate our businesses, how we operate, our infrastructure, and how we engage with customers. And so I think, this is going to be a long journey for most organizations, right? And so,
There's a lot of work to do, and it's not going to be flipping a light switch. But Leonard, I really appreciate you taking a minute to talk through it with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks.